by an asteroid that it may have something that maybe stripped its atmosphere off?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't see a lot of craters. There are some cratered areas on Mars, but not a lot of craters, and certainly not like what we see on the Moon. It could be that something else, maybe some large, very superheated. Hey, maybe my black hole went by and sucked up the atmosphere. I don't know. Part of what you need to have to keep the atmosphere is what we have is the magnetosphere, right? So we have this hot molten core of our Earth that's like a magnet, it's rotating and whatnot, and it creates this magnetosphere which protects us from a lot of the solar wind and the radiation and things like that. So if Mars doesn't have that molten core, then it's not going to have the magnetosphere that we have, and would have a harder time keeping its atmosphere.
Yeah, really. Now, what about the Moon? I mean, you know how we see asteroids or comets hitting other planets like Shoemaker 9, 9. But how come we never see much hit the Moon?
I think we have. I think that NASA has seen some impacts. But one, we have to be looking. So if nobody's looking, I don't know that we have anybody watching the Moon every day. And also, the Moon is tidally locked with Earth, right? So the part of the Moon that we always see, we always see that side, and we have the dark side of the Moon. The Earth, the Moon is rotating, but because it's tidally locked, we always just see one side. So the dark side of the Moon is more likely getting hit more often, and if it did, we wouldn't see it. And I think that this China lander that's still there and still recording data is really the first spacecraft that's landed on the dark side of the Moon. So we're just starting to learn some things about that side of the Moon.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me ask you this, because we talked about this before, at least I bring it up. What's the odds of, say not even a catastrophic asteroid hitting us, but one big enough that if it hit like the super volcano, that it could really, work as a catalyst to really set things off?
Yeah. What if a good-sized city killer asteroid struck Yellowstone? Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, maybe it just makes a big splash, a big molten splash, but maybe it could set off, that activity. Who knows? I think if we give Yellowstone enough time, it will explode all by itself. It doesn't need an asteroid to help it.
Yeah, really. Now, let me ask you this. Did an asteroid, you believe, was responsible for the demise of the dinosaurs?
It appears so. I mean, from down there in the Yucatan, there's a huge crater. There are, and they've aged at about the same time, 65 million years ago. There are lots of huge craters, sometimes going back 200 million years ago on Earth. And yeah, very likely it was. There was an article that I read recently that also said volcanoes could have had a big part of it. So if lots of big volcanoes erupted and, put us into, volcanic winter because of all the ash and CO2 in the atmosphere, that could have done it too.
Yeah, really. So with all the stuff that's out there floating around, I do notice they like to measure distances by lunar distances. Now, I do know there's one coming by within the next, either tomorrow or next couple of days anyway, that it's going to be anywhere between 1.5 to 5.5 lunar distances away. That's kind of close. I mean, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And again,
but that would mean it's coming, it's going to pass beyond the Moon. So, to me, and, it's still small in space, right? But I think we really should get scared when it's less than one lunar distance, because then it's coming in within 238,000 miles between Earth and the Moon. So that would be even more scary.
Exactly. And you touched on something earlier. What would happen? I mean, if one came so close that, maybe not actually hit one of the 4,000 and 1,170 satellites up there, but maybe close enough, because it wouldn't have to actually hit them. The kinetic force and the speed of them would probably mess a bunch of them up. I mean, that could really throw our economy out of whack or shut us down some way or form, wouldn't you think?
Yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, we had, this asteroid OK 2019 come at 40,000 miles, and our telecommunications satellites are at 22,000 miles. Other asteroids or other satellites are lower than that. But yeah, what if an asteroid came through and wiped out a bunch of satellites? We would, could disrupt phone service and satellite TV and all kinds of things. Your weather reporting, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the future of how we can detect these, or do we even have a protocol in play that if we see ones coming at us and we got enough time, is there anything we can even do?
Well, I think part of it is this NeoCam will launch in 2025 or so, at the earliest 2025, and that will be an infrared space telescope, and it will be more sensitive than the old one, the NEO-WISE. So that part of the problem with detecting asteroids is that a lot of the times they're very dark, as black as coal, as black you can imagine, and all this, at nighttime, all of space is black. So since they don't reflect much light, they're really hard to spot. The infrared telescope is hoping that they get some sunlight, so that there's a bit of heat radiating from them, so that the infrared scan can pick up and spot more asteroids. The problem is those infrared telescopes can't look toward the sun, because if it gets sunlight in the lens, it messes up the whole infrared idea. So between the sun and us, it's 92 million miles of space that could have thousands, tens of thousands of asteroids flying by. A lot of these close calls that we don't see coming are coming at us from the direction of the sun. So if there's I think we need more telescopes, not just one. There are ground-based telescopes, but most of the time they have to operate at night, and also be not looking at the direction of the sun. So it's a problem. I think we need more space satellites. We need more eyes on the sky.
Well, I think we actually need some on the moon too. It would be a good platform to watch for.
Sure.
We need that type of resource. Again, you can't take these telescopes and face them towards the sun, because you're right. What happens is the capturing device, the CCD, that's what captures the image. Like what your little camera has on your cell phone.
Sure.
Okay, you face that at the sun, you damage it. And it doesn't take long, it won't work. If you actually took your camera and held it for a couple minutes at the sun, throw your phone or camera part away, because that's it. It's toast. It's gone. So,
and you just can't see anything. Even if it didn't break, you just can't see anything.
No.
And to answer the other question, if we did see something and we had enough time, then we could use, and Dr. Joe Nuth, who helped me on some of the science here, he had said if we had at the ready rockets that we could fire in a short time, which that in NASA language, that's a year or so, and it's ready to go, we can use something called a high velocity asteroid intercept vehicle. And there's one in the book. I called it Harpoon, and I got all the data and everything from Dr. Bong Wee, who was writing about deflection technology. So you have this spacecraft that's moving at very high velocity, and it's a two-part vehicle. So you have this kinetic impactor at out in front, and it's at the end of a long boom, maybe a 10-meter boom. And at the end of the boom, you have the spacecraft that has a nuclear explosive device. And the idea is that this impactor impacts the asteroid and creates a small crater in the asteroid, enough so that the nuclear device can have a subsurface explosion. So it's more effective than like just blowing up a nuclear weapon next to the asteroid. If you can actually try to penetrate into it even a little bit, you have a much chance at disrupting. You're going to shake this asteroid. You're not going to blow it to smithereens. You want to disrupt it with shock waves so it breaks into smaller pieces. So it's not going to explode into smithereens. But that concept, is being worked on, and this project we talked about a little earlier, DART, is the first of its kind. DART doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but it could, So that's really, if we have enough time, you need to, actually try to blow it up. Pushing it slowly, maybe if you have two or 3 decades or many, many years, you could push an asteroid to a different orbit, but that's those concepts are being bantered around, but there's nothing really planned for it.
Well, I know that they talked about sails, and catch the solar winds to maybe change the pattern of the asteroid. They also have talked about, mounting rocket engines on an asteroid and nudge it. Yeah, they got a whole bunch of ideas. And the thing is, I think they got to come up with some idea to deflect it, because what happens next week, they discover when it's going to hit and destroy humanity in a year from now. I mean, I'm sure all of a sudden every scientist in the world, they're going to drop what they're doing, and that's going to be what they're going to focus on. How can we deflect this asteroid? One, do we blow it up before it has a chance? But then in that case, we could have, shotgun pellets coming towards Earth. Or do we nudge it somehow? And maybe nudging it, you know what? Things sometimes you calculate it right, and it doesn't go the way you plan. Like when you go to cut a tree down next to your mobile home, and you sit there and you put the ropes and pull it the other way, it decides it's still going to fall on the mobile home after you make your wedge cut and drop it. I mean,
that's a problem with these ideas of whether you strap a rocket to the side of the asteroid or you have a ion thruster that's on a spacecraft that's pointed at it and nudges it away. The question is, okay, how do you steer that asteroid? You can nudge it and move it, but how do you actually steer the thing? You might make things worse.
That's the whole problem. Now, our time is almost up. Can you hang on for after the break, which is a 2-minute break, for another 15 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. We'll be back.
You have me.
Well, I got you on, and you know what? You're a great guest. We'll be back on with Mke McCoy right after all this. So stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark. Check out our web, nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Across a sunlit room, a face smiles with a flare. Dreams Talk